Okay, so I've been this week, from Monday, exploring a set of meditation suggestions, teachings sounds too grand, meditation hints, how to deepen your meditation. So I'll review it a little bit, and then I want to say what we're going to do in this final toolkit, and then we'll do it, okay? So I'll talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll meditate for about half an hour, okay? So what we've been exploring this week is how to move from ordinary everyday consciousness, the kind of consciousness that is predominated by mental chatter, really, without putting too fine a point on it, predominated by what Buddhism calls prapuncture, which means mental proliferation, surplus thought. It's your mind chattering, planning, fantasizing, remembering, yearning, and it goes on automatically, yeah? And it dominates ordinary consciousness. It's driven, unaware, and habitual. Yeah? So prapuncture, if anyone asks you in the cafe afterwards, it's it's driven, unaware, and habitual. So your prapuncture, my prapuncture, will move in the direction automatically that it does. You know, so if you're prone to anxiety, and if you're not paying attention, your mind will drift back into some kind of anxious scenario. If you're prone to irritation or dislike, you'll drift into that. If you're prone to feeling low and self-critical, you'll just drift into that automatically because of the automatic nature of surplus thought. Yeah. So the main thing to say about it really is it's a very, very thin layer of human experience. As I say, it's driven, unaware, and habitual. And in that state, in ordinary consciousness, when it's dominated by prapuncture, really, I'm afraid, folks, sorry to tell this on a Saturday, but your life isn't really going anywhere. I mean that in a really nice Buddhist-y way. That prapuncture is, as I say, driven, it's unaware, it's habitual, it's automatic. You're kind of going around in circles, yeah? And you know what it's like. We all do that, pretty much, yeah? So that's a shame that we get stuck in that. So what I've been trying to do is trying to help people move from ordinary consciousness, dominated by surplus thought, dominated by inner chatter, to samadhi, as Buddhists would call it, and then from samadhi to prajna. And today I want to try and get to teaching a bit about prajna. Yeah? So the first thing we need to do, that I was saying right all the way on Monday, you can have a look at the YouTube. You can look at our YouTube channel, the RBC YouTube channel, and at least from Tuesday we filmed them. We forgot on Monday, actually, which is fine because it wasn't that good. It was all right, but the first thing we need to do about this prapuncture, this question we all have about being dominated by inner images and chatter. Basically, our mind most of the time is like YouTube channel, isn't it? So you play the film that you've habitually played. As soon as that film stops, whether it's a blame narrative or a fantasy success or a lust scenario, as soon as that film stops, your YouTube channel of your mind suggests another 8 films that are a bit similar. And then you just click on one of those. And then you just carry on circling through like that. Yeah, that's what prapuncture is like. And it dominates everyday consciousness. And it's really not enough. It's what makes us feel that our life is shallow, lacking in substance, finally unsatisfactory. Yeah? But you can't think your way out of it. So if you don't remember anything from the week that I've done so far, you can't think your way out of prapuncture. As soon as you get irritated with your prapuncture, as soon as you wish you weren't thinking like that, because you want this groovy sounding thing called samadhi, all you do is you make prapuncture worse. Yeah? So you cannot think your way out of thought. So what we need to practice first of all, and what I was saying earlier on in the toolkit, is we need to keep stepping out of prapuncture into your direct sensations. Yeah. So the other day, I can't remember which day it was, I I went to the loo before the class, and just as I was washing my hands, I noticed that I was feeling resentful to someone. Nobody in this room, don't worry, which is a gag I also made when I said it. And I'm rather prone to that, to sort of feeling slightly aggrieved and so on. Very easy just to slip into that without really noticing it, yeah? So the first thing I was saying is, okay, you just step out of that into how does that feel, to feel resentful, yeah? How does that feel in the body? Does that just tune into the direct feelings? Do you want to just sit down on the step for a minute? Yeah, don't let anybody else in. I think we're boring. Anyone else will get, anyway. Hang on. So you can't think your way out of thought. The first thing to do is step out, keep noticing prapancha, that mental proliferation, and just keep tuning into the direct sensations in your body. Resentment, excitement, anxiety, whatever it is. Yeah? Try to keep coming back to the reality, not the constructed narrative about the reality. Yeah? So I was concentrating quite a lot on that earlier on in this session. Then I was saying that to enter into samadhi, and samadhi is that state of energized calm. It means, it's probably simplest just to call it a state of psychophysical wholeness. So to think is the same as to feel. Body and mind are newly integrated. It's very pleasant, samadhi, even rapturously pleasant. It can lead to things like rapture and bliss and so on. It's that lovely sense of no longer being distracted or distractible, no longer being at variance with yourself, no longer being sort of stuck in like a sullen mood or a slightly whatever it is mood, but of being unified. The image the Buddha used is it's like mixing soap flakes with water. Yeah, so your whole experience is saturated by mind and it's completely unified. Yeah. It's really what you want. You don't know whether you want it, perhaps. But when you're, trying party drugs, etc., or whatever you're doing, that's really because you want that experience. You're better off here, of course. But the reason why we do a lot of the stuff we're doing is because we're trying to get into this experience of feeling whole, unified, non-broken up, non-distracted, non-polarized, non-neurotic. We human beings want to have this sort of ripened sense of humanity. It's very, very pleasurable, very, very pleasurable indeed, and very good for you, good for your whole system. The first thing to do to get into samadhi is to take full responsibility for your mind. This has become a bit of a theme on the toolkit. So we need to really take ownership of our mind, how it actually is now. Not how you'd like it to be, not how you think it should be, but how it actually is. And part of that ownership, taking responsibility, which is much more difficult than it sounds, is renouncing any kind of blame. It's very easy to think that it's not my mental states, it's caused by other people. Yeah? We're sort of wired to believe that it's not that I was in a resentful state the other day, it's that this person did these objectively things which have caused me to feel that. And as soon as we think like that, we make ourselves passive and we can't change, because it's to do with their behaviour, not to do with our mind. The only part of this whole universe, which is, I believe, rather large, that you could actually change, directly change, is your own mind. Yeah? As soon as you change your mind, your whole experience changes. So to get into samadhi, first of all, you need to take full ownership of your life, and you need to feel that in this meditation. Yeah? If you don't do that, you don't really know what you're working with. You're just starting with ideas, really. Yeah. So to make valuable use of meditation, the more you feel and know where you are, whatever it is, without really much judgment about that, good mood, bad mood, excitable, sleepy, whatever it is, unless you're really feeling where you are, it's very, very difficult to get anywhere with meditation. Yeah? So that's to do with taking full responsibility for your mind. Your mind doesn't belong to the person who said that thing, or it doesn't belong to the decision about Brexit, or it doesn't belong to your boss. Your mind is your mind, and if you make yourself passive, you just, your life won't go anywhere, frankly. Seem to be very keen on that statement. Very difficult, it's easy to say, very difficult to live out. Very, very difficult to live out. But without that, our life won't flourish. Once we've taken ownership of where we are, once we've taken full ownership of our mind, which is as much to do with feeling it through the body as knowing it. Sometimes we think we know things, but it's just a heady kind of knowledge. It's a kind of fully knowing it in a much more deeper sense than we use that word know. Then we need to look to really softening and relaxing the body. I talked about this the other day, so perhaps have a look at the YouTube about it. But one of the things that stops us going up into this unified, pleasurable, enriched state of samadhi is any degree of grasping, holding on, tension. Yeah. So one of the things I've been teaching on this seminar is to keep looking for any kind of gripping. And I use this metaphor that, when you grip, you're trying to hold on to something, but you're also trying to push something away with your fist. Yeah. As soon as you're gripping with your mind or your emotions or your body, you're trying to hold on to something, the idea of pleasure for lunch, perhaps, but you're pushing away something, the feeling of being a bit hungry now. Yeah. And as soon as we do that, and we all do that, it's completely natural, it's nothing to feel bad about, it just stops you going into higher consciousness. Yeah. It stops you getting into samadhi. So the simplest place to look for that is to look in your body. Where are you doing that? In your belly, in your shoulders, your face, in your jaw is very common, in your thighs. Look for where you're gripping. If you're very subtle, you can look for where you're gripping in your emotions, in your thoughts, in your mind. Yeah. Not enough time to say more about that. Once you've started to relax the body, relax is much too weak a word. Once you've started to soothe out all of that gripping and holding, which is soothing out and combing out your mind, smoothing out your mind, what you start to notice is your experience becomes more pleasurable. Yeah? Even if it's only momentarily, you just get little moments of pleasure, little moments of release. Yeah? And that's what you're looking for a bit. Not too hard because it will go away, but looking for little moments of relief and release. So the next thing you need to look at to go into samadhi is pleasure, particularly physical pleasure. The more you feel comfortable, the more you feel unified, the more you start to experience pleasure. So yesterday I mainly talked about how we try to, without grasping at pleasure, and very importantly, without pushing away pain, which is just going back into that again. As soon as you grasp at pleasure or push away pain, you've just gone back into ordinary consciousness again. So even if you were just about to have this lovely samadhi experience, as soon as you try and get it, it goes. Yeah. So I talked yesterday about how we might explore and open up to any pleasure, especially in the body and in the heart, and gradually let that sort of open out a bit, let that suffuse the body a bit. Eventually in metta, your whole body can be sort of drenched with pleasure, very, very pleasurable, and your mind, in fact you can't really tell the difference between your mind and body in samadhi. They feel radiantly unified. It's as if your body becomes less concrete and your mind becomes less ephemeral, becomes more stabilized. Less broken up, yeah. But the Buddhist vision of doing all of that, if you enter into a samadhi, it will immediately change how you feel. When you go out afterwards, you'll feel suddenly everything looks brighter, the spaces between people feel greater, you can't remember why you'd be in a bad mood about anything, you are more open to people, all of those natural consequences from samadhi. But the Buddhist vision of samadhi is to try to cultivate that mind and mostly we're saying cultivate it outside of meditation. So even before that samadhi, we need to be doing things like cultivating friendship, I think is absolutely vital. Cultivating generosity, absolutely vital. Those kind of outward-going, softening, warming actions, some love of beauty, for instance, is important. Some stillness and quiet is important. But I'd say I'd particularly emphasise friendship and generosity. If you're not generous, you haven't got a hope in meditation, I'm afraid. Because lack of generosity just really ties you down. You can be kind of a bit wibbly-wobbly in all sorts of other ways, but if you're not generous, the whole path closes. Yeah. So the whole idea is to cultivate this unified mind so that you can use that unified mind to explore the nature of reality, to get to grips with what your situation, your human situation, really is, and therefore make the most of being here. Yeah. So I want to, just as a taster today, suggest one way you might start to try and cultivate prajna. So first of all, we'll try to cultivate samadhi. Prajna just means wisdom, which isn't a very good word for it, but let's leave semantics aside. But we'll try and cultivate some samadhi, then we'll try and touch into wisdom. So what I'm not going to go into the. I'm not wanting to be metaphysical with this. All I'm wanting to do is let's try a way of doing it and see what happens. Yeah, that's what the Buddha would do. So what I'd suggest is we'll try and get into samadhi a little bit, and then you just bring to mind, in this very, hopefully, positive, relaxed state. Well, what the Buddha said is that our lives are like a dewdrop on a blade of grass. Yeah? That's one of the images he used. That our human life is like a dewdrop on a blade of grass. Something really, really beautiful and very fragile and passing. Again and again, the Buddha comes back to this in sutras, the passingness of things. Yeah? So, in this meditation, what I'd like to do at some point, and I'll lead you through it a little bit, is just in a way bring that image to mind. Just remember that. It's interesting, we've got Parinirvana Day today, tomorrow, which is particularly focusing on the fact of death. And if we don't focus on the fact of death in a useful way, we need to do that. Yeah, we just really need to do that. Otherwise, we don't realise we're alive now. And this meditation I'm suggesting now is a way of trying to do that in meditation a bit. So perhaps bring to mind that image even, that our life comes and goes so quickly. Yeah. Like a dewdrop on a blade of grass. So what you might do, and what I've been doing, I did it this morning, is you just remember that, golly, it's so brief. When you're young, it feels like it goes on forever. By the time you're my age, I'm 56, golly, it seems fast. It gets faster as you get older. Incredible. So you remember that, what I do sometimes is I just very lightly bring to the mind the fact that I was born and I'm going to die. Yeah? I don't know when I'm going to die. And that's one of the great issues of our human life. We know we're going to die, we've got no idea when. Could be today. What we know is that there's this span between birth and death. Before birth, infinite time without us. Yeah? So I was just reading last night about Matisse painting in Paris, and on a still night in Paris, you could hear the guns of the Somme when it was quiet in Paris on a still night. Yeah? Unimaginable, and that's not that long ago. But then you go back and back, infinite time, infinite space without you in it, yeah? Before your birth. Then after your death, infinite time and space without you in it. Yeah? I mean, it's amazing. We read these books, people in the past, but we forget how long ago that was, and then you just keep going back and back and back. Yeah? So do you see, when you think of it in that context, and that is our human context, it's not a Buddhist thing, that...
I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
I'm so sorry, I don't even know that.
Everyone's done it. At least it wasn't me. So if you... is that all right? if you just sort of bring that to mind, infinite time before birth, infinite time after death, that's just the case, yeah? That's just the case. So do you see how when you think like that, a dewdrop on a blade of grass is exactly right. It's not an exaggeration at all. It's just the case. It's just where we actually are. Never mind our planning and emailing and Facebooking and all. That's where we actually are, yeah? Between these two vast seas, this tiny glitter of light of a dewdrop on a blade of grass. The more we wake up to that, the more we're truly alive. Yeah? So bring that to mind for a bit. And then what that means is that anything you're experiencing just now, a headache, a back sore, worrying about something, feeling a bit sleepy, feeling a bit grumpy, anything you're experiencing just now is incredibly precious because it's in this tiny slither of light between these two vast seas, yeah? So we want to experience anything we're experiencing now as vividly and completely and directly and sensually as possible because that's just this tiny glimmer between these two great seas, yeah? So let's try and do it.